Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Friday, May 23rd, 2025. It's the end of the week, the end of the day. It's our happy time and our most popular presentation, the Intelligence Community Roundtable with Larry Johnson and Ray McGovern. Larry, Ray, as always, thank you. Welcome here. Thank you for the double duty that you give us every week. Larry, how should the president of South Africa have responded to President Trump when he, depending on how you want to look at this, surprised or ambushed him with videos in the Oval Office earlier this week?
I think Mr. Ramaphosa was entirely too polite. This was an ambush. Number one, look, there's no denying that there are some issues in South Africa, and that, yes, there have been attacks on white farmers and some of their property's been taken away. But this is not the government policy. And there are people in South Africa that advocate that. And yet, Donald Trump had the audacity to accuse South Africa of genocide. And, you know, if I was Mr. Ramaphosa, I would have said, whoa, Mr. President, stop. You're in no position to lecture me on the issues of genocide. I said, we don't, it's not our government policy. We've not openly declared that all whites must be exterminated. But you've sat in this very Oval Office and you've embraced Bibi Netanyahu, who has called for the extermination of the Palestinian people, declaring them as Amalek. And they have killed over 60,000. Yet you're sitting here talking about the deaths of 1,000 white farmers as if it's the most important thing in the world, where you sit there and you facilitate the murder of these Palestinian children, these women, these elderly. And plus, you have no moral authority as a country to lecture me on the deaths of civilians. Again, it's not our policy, but you in Yemen, in Vietnam, in Libya, in Afghanistan, in Iraq have killed millions of civilians. So spare me your moral outrage. And at that point, I would have gotten up and walked out.
God bless you, Larry. Obviously, President Ramaphosa did his best, but was very gentlemanly and polite. I mean, the least he could have said was, what you've said is false and libelous. The best he could have done would have been a litany like you did. You know, Ray, Chris tells me that Microsoft has quietly implemented a policy blocking employee emails from containing the words Palestine, Gaza, or genocide.
There you have it, Judge. It's the worst I've seen. It's just as bad as the old Soviet Union that I was so familiar with during the early parts of my career. You have criticism. You have censorship of the kind that exists in the most totalitarian states, but it's facilitated by high-tech companies that do a lot of business with the government. It's pretty corrupt.
Corrupt is right. Ray, what is the reaction in the intelligence community? And I'll ask Larry the same thing. What is the reaction in the intelligence community to the public firing of these two CIA agents because their analysis did not conform with the president's political needs? How does the rank and file react to that?
Judge, I have to admit I've lost contact with the rank and file, as my Irish grandmother would say at the age of 97, they're all dead now, about her friends, as if it were their faults. But many of my friends are all dead now, and the other ones won't speak to me, so I defer to Larry on this one.
Larry, do you have any feel for how agents who you guys know better than anybody what you go through to gather information react to the firing of their superiors for delivering an honest report?
Well, the correct terminology is officers. Agents are foreigners who've been recruited as spies.
Okay.
So these were intelligence officers. You know, I don't know what to believe anymore, because the level of disinformation that's pumped out on both sides. It makes it very difficult to ascertain what's going on. If they were jettisoned for presenting objective analysis that ran counter to the president's policies, they should have been given an award because that requires some level of courage.
Right.
I was aware it did happen under Biden, that analysts who were trying to present a more balanced view of what was going on with respect to Russia and Ukraine were actually removed. So this kind of chilling effect on the politicization, if it's going on now under Tulsi Gabbard, shame on her. But this has been long standing. It goes back to the days, as Ray knows, of George Allen, when he was running, George Allen and his analyst Sam Adams, when they were involved with the whole issue of body counts in Vietnam. It's dangerous whenever you allow the intelligence to be politicized, because at that point you're guaranteeing that the country's going to be blind.
Ray, it appears that the neocons that surround the president have prevailed on Steve Witkoff to change his negotiating strategy. The Iranian negotiators walked away from the first negotiations saying we're pretty close to a deal. They're going to allow uranium enrichment for civilian purposes. And then suddenly Witkoff went on national television and said zero enrichment. Now, why make a demand that is a non-starter? This is the moral equivalent, I think, of Zelensky and Rubio demanding the return of the oblasts. Why make a demand is going to fall?
Well, as I look at it, Judge, these are maximalist demands. You start out with these things. Also, unpredictability is the byword here. Witkoff is a creature of Trump. In the ability to predict what Trump's going to do is really hard. Now, as I understand it, a fourth negotiating round between the Iranians and the U.S. has started. So I don't place much store by rhetoric coming out of Witkoff, especially since he has made more sense before. They'll go back to more sense. The big thing to remember here is this all has to do with Israel. We did Iraq because of Israel. The big men wanted to go to Tehran at the time. Now they still want to go to Tehran. They are deterred. And the armed forces of the United States are telling the president, look, don't let Bibi Netanyahu mousetrap you into a war that we cannot win and that will end up with the destruction of Israel, not to mention our military bases in the area.
Larry, I may have misstated the question when I said the neocons around Trump. Doesn't matter if you're a neocon or an American firster on this issue, because they are all Zionists to the core.
Yeah, let's correct a little bit of the timeline. This is actually the fifth meeting that's underway right now. As we're talking, it's Friday in Rome. We haven't had a report out yet about the results of that. But at the start of this week, they had canceled that session. And then the Omanis intervened and the Iranians agreed to come. But the position that the United States has outlined as far as zero enrichment is completely unacceptable to the Iranians. As Pepe Escobar talked about it with you, I think, on Wednesday.
Right.
The other thing that's sort of playing into this, though, is the murder of those two Israeli diplomats in Washington, D.C. on late Wednesday, by an activist screaming, free Palestine. This kind of killing's never justified. And yet it is being used to the hilt here in the United States to further justify violence against the Palestinians and to excuse the genocide and murder by the Israelis. of the Palestinians. So, unfortunately, our domestic politics continue to, in some respects, constrain what even Donald Trump can do. As an example, I think Witkoff's original position was he was willing to let, could tolerate a 3.6% enrichment of uranium, but man, once the Zionist horde was unleashed on him, he quickly was beaten down. And so this is a situation in which these outside influences, particularly by the Israeli government interfering in the U.S. policy, is really setting us up for some potentially terrible things.
I think what you have said is also understood in the Middle East, Larry. Ray, yesterday, Al Jazeera reported that Iran says it will hold the United States responsible for any Israeli attack on nuclear sites, and the Revolutionary Guard warns that Israel will suffer a devastating and decisive response if it attacks Tehran. Are we getting closer and closer to violence, Ray McGovern?
That's the reality, Judge. But the problem is that Iran has a deterrent. For the first time in history, 4,000 years of Persian history, Iran has deterred Israel and the United States. They have the ability to have a mass reaction and kill lots of people, Americans included. So, yeah, this will go up to the wire, and Witkoff will say, "Well, but we tried. That was our position, but we'll let them refine, or we'll let them get enough high-grade uranium so that they can power their medical reactors and so forth. We'll go back to a deal similar to the JCPOA." I think that's the inevitable result. Why? Because the U.S. forces don't want to have another loss, and the Pentagon has to be telling the president, this is really stupid. You thought Ukraine was stupid? This is doubly stupid. That's where I find some comfort in the notion that there is deterrence now. For the first time, Israel is deterred. The fly in the ointment, of course, is if Netanyahu, desperate to avoid that bridal suite with his wife in the jail in Tel Aviv, if he decides, well, it's jail for me, or we start a war, what will Trump do then? I think even then Trump will restrain himself because the military doesn't want to get involved in a match with Iran, who has shown the ability now to even track untrackable, supersonic, hypersonic missiles. They can track F-35s. They almost shot one down. The Houthis can do that. So the advantage that the U.S. used to enjoy traditionally is no longer there. I count on the military, however corrupt they have been, to point out to the president, look, we don't want to lose another one. For God's sake, don't let Netanyahu mousetrap you.
Larry, you referred earlier to Netanyahu's reference to Amalek, some ancient biblical theory that the Jews can slaughter non-Jews. I want you to watch. I know this will aggravate you. It has all of us. I want you to watch this former member of the Knesset, then a member of Netanyahu's Likud party, calling for the slaughter of babies in Gaza. Cut number 10.
Every child in Gaza is the enemy. We are at war with the Gazan entity, the Gazan terror entity, which we ourselves established in Gaza, in Oslo, and in the disengagement. The disengagement that Prime Minister Netanyahu voted in favor of, that is the enemy now. Every such child to whom you are now giving milk, in another 15 years will rape your daughters and slaughter your children. We need to conquer Gaza and settle it. And not a single Gazan child should remain there. Let's stop telling ourselves this deception just to score points in this game between pro-Bibi and anti-Bibi. This isn't about left or right, it's about winning this war, and it's about justice. When will we learn? When will we learn?
Horrific attitude, Larry, shared by a significant number of the Israeli public.
Yeah, well, Mr. Heinrich Himmler there looks pretty good for his advanced age as being this extreme Nazi. I mean, look, I remember the first time I read in 8th grade William Schreier's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, in the particular chapter that dealt with the Holocaust. And what I remember being struck with at the time was this disregard for the Jewish children, the murder of Jewish children, how horrific it was. Well, here and now, you've got this, esteemed member of the Israeli society. I mean, he's not some isolated flake, some crank. He's mainstream, and without batting an eye, he's advocating the murder of children. And there was this one Jew who made a comment several years ago about the woe upon those who harm children, because it would be better for a millstone to be tied around their neck and tossed into the depths of the sea. Jesus had some pretty strong views about how children are supposed to be treated. And when Jesus made those comments, he didn't say only Jewish children, only Muslim children, only Christian children. No, just children. And it is, this is where the morality of a society is put to the test. That if we stand by silently while this kind of horror is allowed to be presented and accepted as okay, then we ourselves become complicit in it.
Ray, earlier this week, Tom Fletcher, who's the UN Undersecretary General for Humanitarian and Relief, predicted that by yesterday, Thursday, 14,000 Gazan children would die of malnutrition if aid didn't get through. I don't know if the aid got through. At the same time, last weekend, on one of the talk shows, Witkoff referred to Donald Trump as a humanitarian. Now, Larry has already eviscerated Donald Trump as a humanitarian in the discussion about Cyril Ramaphosa. But did these kids die? Is the United States not going to do anything to save them, just in deference to Netanyahu's political problems?
Well, in answer to your question about the trucks, my latest information is that 5 trucks got in. Okay. 5 trucks. Now they need 500 trucks each day to feed people in Gaza. So 5 and guess what? 2 of those trucks were not carrying food or nourishment. What were they carrying? Shrouds, burial shrouds. My God. Now, I just point out, to pick up where Larry left off, that fellow that Larry mentioned was a Jewish Palestinian. His name was Jesus, but he had to run away from the slaughter of babies, according to the Bible, run away to Egypt, of all places. Now, in those days, you could get back into Egypt from Gaza. Okay. Now, when this guy talks about justice, I would just have to say that I'm appalled by how the Zionists have distorted a very pure Jewish tradition of justice. The original word for justice in the Bible was tzedakah. It denoted, not connoted, but denoted showing mercy to the poor. My God, okay? That's been the Abrahamic tradition. That's what Yahweh cares about. That's what Jesus cares about. That's what the prophet cares about, okay? And that's why Hamas is so popular, because they cared about the poor. So, to talk about justice in the terms that Zionist, that horrible guy, so there's just such a distortion of a religion that used to be, a hallmark of people seeking justice by showing mercy to the poor, denotation, not interpretation or connotation. Tzedakah, mercy to the poor.
Larry, here's Netanyahu's latest on the relationship between the IDF and Gaza just 3 days ago. Chris, cut number 14.
Eventually, we will have an area fully controlled by the IDF, where Gaza's civilian population can receive aid, while Hamas gets nothing. This is part of the effort to defeat Hamas alongside the intense military pressure and our massive incursion, which is essentially aimed at taking control of all of Gaza, and stripping Hamas of any ability to loot humanitarian aid. This is the war plan and the victory plan.
This is their mantra. We can't let aid in because it would feed Hamas. So in order to harm Hamas, we'll starve babies, Larry.
Yeah, you come up with all sorts of excuses and justifications for inhuman behavior. But, Israel is in the under the control of hubris. Now after 21 months or more, they have failed to defeat Hamas. And, the fact of the matter is that from a military standpoint, Israel has had every advantage you could possibly imagine. And yet what this has exposed is, as is the case with the United States and the Houthis, what are the limits of this conventional military power. They can kill civilians. They can create all sorts of rubble. They can level Gaza literally to the ground. And yet at the same time, Israel creates for itself almost an insurmountable tactical problem. They want to go in and control territory, yet under that territory, there are tunnels, there are hiding places, and there are ambush zones. And Israel's going to continue to take casualties. And the fact of the matter is that Israel is very unwilling to incur and unable to accept the kinds of casualties that they've been experiencing over the last 20, 21 months. And it's having visible effects on the military's level of readiness. That they've already complained that the reservists are refusing to report for duty. And you've got, as you reported on some of your other shows as well, former Israeli generals are speaking out in condemnation and actually appalled by what they see as the conduct of Netanyahu's government with respect to the Palestinians. So, Israel hasn't completely lost its soul yet, I guess is my point.
What do you think of the United Kingdom suspending trade talks with Israel? Is this, whipping somebody with a wet noodle, Ray?
Well, yeah, but it's an indication that even Britain, and I say even Britain, realizes that it's a bad look to support genocide. The French are in on that too. Others are coming forward and saying, look, you better stop. Now, if we don't stop it, I mean, as I calculated, 10% of the Palestinians have already been murdered or killed or starved to death. My God, we got to stop it. And who's going to stop it? We are Americans. Why? Because they depend on Trump. They depend on our administration. So we have to cause a lot of good trouble. We have to make sure that our leaders know that we don't stand as American people for genocide, and we want it to stop. I think the sentiment in our country has changed appreciably since those days when Netanyahu could brag about 80% support among the Americans, no matter what we do. It's absurd, said Netanyahu in 2001. Well, it's still absurd if it's above 50%, but I doubt that it's above 50% now. And many real justice, Jews are coming forth now and saying, look, this is not our religion. This is Zionism. It needs to be stopped. So we're going to stop it, and we're going to do it. We're going to find ways to do it by causing good trouble.
You're going to get arrested again at some congressional hearing, Larry, Ray McGovern.
Yeah.
It'll be something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, God love you. I would like to be there. Last topic, Larry. What is your take on the Trump-Putin phone call earlier this week? Does Donald Trump, do the Americans understand the Russian mentality?
Genuinely, no. Again, the way Trump is talking about this, he keeps presenting it as if this is entirely a conflict between Ukraine and Russia over, they just don't like each other. They have a bad history together. Without acknowledging that the United States has been the major instigator and cause of this war. because of our advocacy and leadership in expanding NATO and making NATO the threat that it is or represents to Russia. That is when you hear Putin talk about root causes, it's all about NATO, and it started under Bill Clinton, expanded under George W. Bush, continued under Barack Obama. Ironically, and I've used the metric of military exercises as an indicator, because exercises, you're training your military forces for possible war. And it's noteworthy that under the exercise program went from an average of 3 exercises per year under Bill Clinton to 5 per year under Donald Trump. So Trump has, whether he wishes to acknowledge it or not, has been as guilty of provoking this conflict with Russia as anyone else. Now, the Russians they're giving Trump the benefit of the doubt. They're accepting the fact that he so far has avoided the trap that the Europeans laid for him, because they basically wanted Trump to go try to get some concessions out of Putin. If he couldn't get concessions, then to immediately declare bone-crushing sanctions. And Trump has shied away from that. But, frankly, I don't think Trump's going to be able to avoid that because of what the Senate and the House are doing. You've already got 80 U.S. senators insisting on the bone-crushing sanctions. They continue to portray Russia as this imperial force intending to take over the world. And there's no amount of reason or logic that you can apply to them to bring them back to reality. So I think we could get into a situation where Trump is going to be, penned up by his own legislature, that he won't have any other option but to take a confrontational approach with Russia.
Where do you think these negotiations are going, Ray? I mean, Larry's right. Trump totally armed the Ukrainians during his first term. That was the cause of, it was absurd, but it was the cause of the impeachment.
Judge, I see the glass is more than half full now. Negotiations are going to start this coming month. The 2-hour discussion that they had a week ago was pivotal. As Larry mentioned, Trump dissed the Europeans, dissed Lindsey Graham, dissed Kellogg and all those hardliners, and said, look, I'm going to go toward negotiations. I'm going to bring Zelensky in here. I got Zelensky to thank me for starting these negotiations. I see great promise there. Now, the background, of course, is that John Mearsheimer, 11 years ago, right? September, October 2014, said that the crisis is the West's fault. And if the West proceeds down the path it was going, it would destroy Ukraine. 11 years ago. That's the reality. And Putin has made that clear to Trump. 2 hours, that's enough to tutor Trump on what's at stake here and who has the upper hand. So I think Trump has been very courageous in a sense in taking on these other guys. Larry is right. There's many a slip between cup and lip. But this meeting, I think, was a cup or a glass more than half full, and we'll see how it plays out. It's going to happen. Maybe the Vatican will afford good services, but wherever the talks happen, Zelensky's going to have to either cooperate, or Trump will be able to say, well, we tried. You're on your own. You think the Europeans can help you. Good luck with that. I'm out of here.
Finally, President Putin honored Larry's and my new friend, Sergei Lavrov, with the highest award the Russians can give, the Order of St. Andrew, founded by the Tsar Peter the Great. St. Andrew, who was the brother of St. Peter, the first pope, but St. Andrew is the patron saint of Russia. Now watch this. it's a little emotional. Larry, I hope he's not going to retire, as you and I sort of got the feeling he was interested in when we spent a few hours with him. But here's President Putin praising Foreign Minister Lavrov. Look at the look on Lavrov's face. Chris, cut number 20.
Now, the talents of our chief diplomat, Sergei Lavrov, have been recognized both in Russia and abroad, both by our friends and by our geopolitical opponents, as we like to call them. His dedication to Russia, his readiness to continue to defend our interests regardless of circumstances, is what we value. Many years of work for the betterment of our motherland is his accomplishment. He is given he is awarded the Order of St. Andrew.
I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it. I just hope he's not going anywhere, Larry.
Well, he's been in this game for well over 30 years and is rightly deserved the honor of being considered one of the preeminent foreign ministers and diplomats in the world. There's a pretty good bench behind him. You know, I've met Sergei Rybkov, one of the deputy foreign ministers. He is as capable as Sergei Lavrov, but Lavrov is he's been a giant, and he was also recently honored by the Russian Orthodox Church. They also bestowed upon him an honor. So, we may be seeing the start of he's saying, "Hey, look, I'd like to go, play golf or fish or do something for a while. I've served my country long enough." But it is a sort of an honor that to get called out like that by Putin. Putin, to his credit, is not an egomaniac where you've got, you don't have to feed Putin's ego like you need to feed Donald Trump's ego.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Another great conversation at the end of the week. Deeply appreciated. I hope the three of you have a great, the two of you, three of us, have a great holiday weekend. We are off on Monday, but hopefully Chris can schedule you both in usual times on Tuesday as if it were a Monday.
Okay.
Have a great holiday. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Judge.
Of course. And of course, we will be dark on Monday, Memorial Day, a national holiday here in the U.S. But on Tuesday, you'll have all of your Monday favorites: Alistair Crook, Ray McGovern, Larry Johnson, and one or two others in the afternoon. Thank you for watching. Have a great holiday weekend. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.